It's funny, people always say to me, oh, you're so successful, you're this, you're that. I always think the minute you think you're successful is the beginning of the end. It's hard to achieve greatness by constantly looking back. I don't care what happened yesterday. It's boom, constant forward hyper momentum. I'm Robert Herjavec. I'm a cybersecurity expert and a shark. So I was born in a tiny little town called Zbieg. It was a communist country, and my dad was a political prisoner. He was just a young guy who hated communism, and he'd stand up in a bar and say things against Tito and he'd get thrown in jail. He ended up going to jail 22 times. And the last time he went in, they said, if you come back, you'll never come back. So he grabbed my mom and I. We crossed the border, got on a boat called the Cristoforo Colombo, and ended up in Canada. It was the land of opportunity, but in the reality of it daily, it was a grind. It was brutally difficult. We had no money, so it was really tough. My first memory of back then, they didn't have English classes, so they just threw me into a classroom, and that was it. Like, I didn't speak the language, and the teacher asked me a question, I was petrified. I hated the fact I was different. I hated the fact that kids picked on me and bullied me and made fun of me, because back home, I was just one of the kids. Here, I was different. The world fundamentally changed for me when I was 12 years old. I came home one day and my mom was home and she was crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she said, oh, I bought this thing. And I look over and it's this industrial-sized vacuum cleaner. We lived in this tiny apartment and she had bought this big vacuum cleaner. I look at the agreement and it was almost more money than we were paying for rent. Like, some salesman had come along and basically conned her into buying this vacuum cleaner. So my dad comes home after having worked 2 shifts in a factory, and he looks at it and looks at how much money it is, and we couldn't afford it. And I said, don't worry about it. You know, it was signed under duress, we won't have to pay. And he says, no, we sign contract, we pay. And it was brutal. Like, it was so hard on us to do that for that stupid vacuum cleaner. There's nothing worse than feeling like a victim. It's one thing to feel like a victim for yourself. It's another thing to have your family feel like a victim. And so I had this awakening of, wow, my parents gave up everything for me. Up until then, it was all about me. Why don't I have any friends? Why am I so unhappy? Why do kids pick on me? And in that moment, I just grew up in that instant. And I remember thinking, I never want anybody to take advantage of my family ever again. From that point on, I really got focused on how things worked and business and putting all that stuff together. Right now, we're the largest privately held security company in the world. That's really motivating, but how do we get to $1 billion? How do we build that global footprint? It's very inspiring. By 2020, there'll be roughly 6 billion people online and 343 trillion IP addresses. Okay, so we're moving into a deeply connected world where everything is connected and everything is in the cloud. The benefit is cost. The things you can do in the cloud from a scale perspective are faster, easier, cheaper than anything you can do in-house. I think People that are entrepreneurial have a constant striving for acceptance. And I know you meet a lot of rebels who say, oh, I want to be a rebel. But I think deep down, we all want to be liked, and we all want to be loved, and we all want to be accepted. When I was 12 years old, I just didn't want to be poor. I didn't have these dreams of starting a business. I just didn't want to live like I lived then. Everybody has that story. Everybody has some element of meaning, and you've just got to take that meaning and channel it into incredibly long hours of really boring drudgery and work, and create something for it. And that's what business is, and that's what starting a company is. The beauty of it is when you look back, you don't remember the work, you remember the exhilaration. And if you have enough meaning, those moments will make it all worthwhile.